Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Preseason has officially begun. Players, coaches back at Hotspur Way. The football season is returning soon. I just want to get out of the break. I've had enough now. I've had enough. I needed a little bit of a rest after the last season, which brought with it, 60 games? 65 if you count the pre-season friendlies. I had my little rest. No more holidays booked. Sorry for anyone that wants those, because they are normally when stuff happens. Yes, the last one, Postecoglou was sacked in, literally an hour after I landed. But that's it. I'm ready to get back to the business of football. And the transfer window is always this annoying period where we all get very emotional, annoyed, overexcited, every extreme on the spectrum, myself very much included, about players. Some of them we know well, some of them we have no idea of. And it's just this crazy time when people are linked, maybe even not even real transfer targets. People get very annoyed about them not coming to Tottenham. Then they do get people, and we're not happy about them playing, and then they become quite good players. It's just emotions are all over the place. And I, again, not putting myself outside of this circle whatsoever. I'm very much in the middle of it. So I just like it when the football starts. And then we can all get angry and emotional and moan about that instead. So pre-season has begun. People are back. First set of kind of non-internationals, a couple of internationals, but mainly non-internationals were back in the group. And back at Hotspur Way. They would have met Thomas Frank, some of them as well. Actually, all of them probably. I'm sure he got around and met them all on their first weekend. Among the ones we know are back because we saw them in various videos or photos, or I just know are back anyway. Dominic Solanke, Lucas Berval, Guillermo Vicario, Dejan Kulusevski, Heung-min, Dane Scarlett, Jed Spence, Antonin Kinski, Brandon Austin. I don't know why I gave him a weird little Brandon at the start. Some of the young loan players that were out last season are back. Ashley Phillips, Jamie Donnelly, Alfie Devine, Josh Keeley, George Abbott, Will Lancashire, Luka Vuskovic, a new arrival technically, even though he was signed 2 years ago, is in the building. I was going to say back in the building. I'm sure he visited as he was in the signing process, but he is in the building going through all his stuff. You can see, certainly in the clips we've seen, very much sticking around Alfie Devine, as he knows him from their loan period together at Westerlo. Brian Hill is back. Brian Hill, who we would expect to be leaving this summer. You never know. Thomas Frank might look at him and go, there's a player I want. Obviously, he had knee surgery towards the end of last season on loan at Girona. But he is back at Hotspur Way. Alejo Velis is back as well. Another player we would expect to head off this summer. So they're both there. Pedro Porro, he was back in the gym the day before, on Friday. I would imagine as he's on international duty, he's not meant to fully be back in the building yet, but that sounds very much like Pedro Porro to me. I had that sit-down interview with him, it was earlier this year, was it maybe January? And listening to him talk about the way he kind of prepares himself physically for games and the work he does away from the club with his own kind of fitness coach as well, the man is a machine. And I don't think that's any coincidence that he didn't suffer a single injury last season. Played 51 matches, 4,130 minutes, another 530 minutes for Spain. So there's a reason behind that, and it is because he's the most ridiculously prepared man in the way he kind of looks after himself. So whether we'll see him involved in pre-season stuff in the next couple of days or not, I don't know. But certainly has been using the gym, has been back and using the gym. Radu Dragusin, James Maddison, we know have been back doing rehab work anyway on their respective injuries. Other international players are expected to come back over the course of the next week or so. I think some of them actually have 4, 5, 6 days more left, depending. I don't know depending on what. But certainly I've heard that certain players might not be back until nearer the end of the week. And whether that is just purely because they're international commitments and how far they had to go, or whether it's due to the amount of minutes they played last season and the toll it took on them. But I don't know. But certainly it seems like they're coming back in stages is the best way to put it. And then you've got the players that played at under-21 and under-19 European Championship. So you've got Archie Gray, obviously went all the way and won it. Matisse Tell, Wilson Odobert with France. Mikey Moore for the under-19s in the England under-19s as well. Talk about first-team players here. They will all be back, I would say, middle of the month-ish, maybe just before. They'll be given extra time, and if they want to take it, they've got to be given a flat 3 weeks at least if they want to take that. Not everyone always takes it. We've had, I know this is going back a bit, but I remember Oliver Skipp coming back from, memory tester, maybe under 21 Euros perhaps one season, and he came back really early to be involved. It was with a new manager. Was it Postecoglou? Might have been Postecoglou. Can't remember. But certainly he came back early. I remember that. Because, the pre-season friendlies will start. I cannot wait. I just cannot wait to get back into the matches again. And look, I want new faces as much as anyone else. I want new signings. That squad needs to be bolstered. Otherwise, it's not going to be ready for what lies ahead. But I think I just want to get back to football now. And no, the Club World Cup is not sating that appetite for me whatsoever. Obviously got the Women's Euros as well, which, to be honest, I haven't watched too much of because I've been watching quite a bit of Wimbledon. And it's kind of the games in the daytime are clashing with that. And then later at night, I do like a bit of tennis. I used to play to a reasonable level when I was young. So that is one of my sports. But yeah, pre-season start, obviously we've got Reading away on the 19th, then Luton away on the 26th. They're all away, so I don't know why I keep saying away. We've got the tour to Hong Kong, South Korea, which I'm really looking forward to. Never been to Hong Kong before. Really, really looking forward to that and seeing the Spurs support there. South Korea, obviously, been very, very fortunate to been to a number of times recently. Arsenal and Newcastle, the opponents in those two countries. Then we've got Harry Kane and the Bayern Munich friendly on August the 7th before competitive games begin. UEFA Super Cup on the 13th against PSG and Udinese. I'm still clinging desperately. I don't know why that's kind of fist more than clinging onto my hope of PSG being slightly knackered. Or not knackered, but lacking sharpness because of their Club World Cup exploits. They won again, obviously beat Bayern. They're through to the semi against Real Madrid. If they can get through to the final, well, someone will play either Chelsea or Fluminense. They will, essentially, if they get 3 weeks off, apologies if you've heard me say this before, they'll get 3 weeks off bare minimum, probably get a bit more because they've had such a long season. But if Luis Enrique just gives them the flat 3 weeks, they still come back only a few days really before the Super Cup. My hope, and I am clinging to that hope, is that they're going to be not quite as sharp as they could normally be. Yes, I know they're an amazing squad with amazing players and still should be overwhelming favourites as the Champions League winners. But I want something to cling to. Let me cling to something. And it's that they might have only just returned to pre-season training. That's my hope. Whereas Spurs will have played 5 friendlies by that point. And quite decent level kind of opposition as well. But look, I know I'm reaching, but let's hope. And then they've only got a couple of days, haven't they? 3 days until they play Burnley on the opening day at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium of the Premier League season. I still cannot believe that game was not a Sunday game. I still don't get that, but there you go. It's going to be a very interesting first. Right in there immediately for Thomas Frank to understand the difficulties of rotating between European games and Premier League games straight off the bat, because he's not going to be able to play the same team twice within 3 days straight away. So we're all going to be arguing about why certain players didn't play, which is going to be fun. Right, onto the staff. You might have seen, if you saw this morning, I did a piece this morning that I understand Thomas Frank has named Matt Wells and Stuart Lewis in his coaching staff, his new look coaching staff at Tottenham, which is shaping up very nicely, actually. It looks like an interesting bunch of people with different skill sets and experience and, I think what's been key to putting together this coaching setup for him, by him, is that he knows, I'm sure he's a very clever guy, he will know that there are gaps in his experience and knowledge when it comes to being a coach. And it is European, it's just exactly what I was saying just before, European experience, juggling a 60-game season compared to a 40-game season. And that is something that I think is going to be key to him, is having people around him that are used to making decisions, and training sessions tailored around having that in mind. And I don't think it's any coincidence that if you look at his coaching staff, there are 3 people he'll be working with at least that have experience of European football, and coaching with that in mind, every other week or whatever. So, I mean, look, we know he brought with him Justin Cochrane, Chris Haslam, Justin Cochrane as first-team assistant coach, Chris Haslam as his head of performance / first-team assistant coach. The two of them were kind of like his right-hand men, as it were, at Brentford. Chris Haslam, is kind of, I don't think maybe people realise quite how kind of elevated his role is alongside Thomas Frank, and he's quite an important member of his team, and not only knowing the performance sports science part of it, but also coaching elements as well. So keep an eye on that dynamic. That'll be really interesting as well. Obviously, he also brought Joe Newton with him, who was the first team coach analyst, I think is his technical title. Then he also brought back someone he previously worked at Brentford for a year, and that is Andreas Georgesson, who was at Man U last season. He was at Arsenal before that as well. And he's got expertise in general coaching as well, but also specifically in set-piece work, both attacking and defensively. I've told you about him in a previous video. Have a little look back, or listen back, watch back, whatever you do. He's a very interesting character with a very wide-ranging experience, but also for a lot of people that were desperate for a set-piece coach, he's your man. But he'll also do other stuff as well. So we know that of Ange Postecoglou's staff, we know Nick Montgomery, Sergio Raimondo, Mile Jedinak all departed last month. From what I understand, Rob Birch is also set not to be part of Thomas Frank's coaching staff. Whether that means he's leaving the club or whether he's involved in some other capacity, you would think probably leaves the club at this point, but we'll see. His place will be taken by Fabian Ote, who, I don't know if that's pronunciation, I'm absolutely guessing there, who is, please tell me underneath if that isn't the case. He was at Liverpool last season. He's a Premier League title winner. He was with them last season with Arne Slot and left at the end of the season. He's also used to be the USA head of goalkeeping, as he was at Liverpool before that. Where else has been? Borussia Mönchengladbach. Oh my goodness, Mönchengladbach. Why does it say Gladbach? Gladbach. It's one of those names that's really long, but actually shouldn't be that hard to say. Mönchengladbach. He was there for 3 years before he took the USA job. Worked at Burnley as assistant coach for a season as well. Had a couple of years at Hoffenheim. He's very experienced. I think he's also technically a doctor. I think he's a doctor of philosophy. He's got a PhD in various kind of aspects. He's been working psychology being one of them as well. Spent about 6 years, I think, studying for a bachelor's and a master's and then a PhD as well. So PhD. Oh, I'm just so scared of them. Clearly, they're on my mind. So he's going to be a very interesting character as well. Another clever chap. And like I say, Matthew Wells will be sticking around as part of Frank's setup. Obviously, he worked his way up to be Postecoglou's right-hand man, his senior assistant coach. And look, if you're not aware who he is Spurs through and through. 36 years old. Grandson of the legendary double winner Cliff Jones, one of the loveliest men in football. I'll always say that because I did an interview with him when I was a young, I say young, I wasn't young, but when I started covering Spurs, and he was so nice to me. He was such a nice guy. He stopped at like a London Awards event and he was just wonderful. And everyone that's met him says exactly the same thing. Matthew Wells, his grandson, I actually used to also report on one of his other grandsons, Scott Nielsen, who used to play for some of the local clubs I used to cover at non-league level, Ware being one of them. He went on to got into the Football League. I think it was at Bradford. I don't remember who it was, but yeah. So clearly, there's a lot of talent has cascaded down from Cliff's DNA. But yeah, so Matthew Wells, very, very highly rated in the game. He's expected to be the next of the line of Chris Davis, Ryan Mason that have gone on to big managers in the Football League. He's expected to do that. Hasn't happened quite yet. He's going to be part of this team, I think, presumably really helping with this transitional year for Thomas Frank and his staff. Justin Cochrane, if you're not aware, used to work within Tottenham's academy. He and Matthew Wells, from what I understand, are good friends, real mutual respect for each other. And I'm sure Justin Cochrane probably would have played a part in it all as well. Of course, Thomas Frank would have wanted to speak to him first and have a real chat with Matt Wells. But, you know, Postecoglou was impressed with him. Thomas Frank clearly has been impressed with him enough to offer him a job as well. Like I say, he's one to watch. He's a great communicator. When I had a little chat with him, just a chat kind of in a hotel kind of reception area, I think it was in Japan, and the tour last year, and he was a very, very nice guy. You could tell he's a very good communicator. I think if anyone's watched or listened to the podcast stuff that he did for the club, also in the recent documentary on winning the Europa League, you could see how good he is at getting his ideas across as well. And he's going to be, a great addition to new staff. And I know there's some people that are always a bit wary of when you're starting a new era, keeping anything from the previous era. But I think you shouldn't see it as a whole. People like Matt Wells can be very adaptable and can essentially, if he's here in the Thomas Frank's team, it's because he's very good at what he does. And Thomas Frank will believe that he can extrapolate what he wants from him and get his game across through him. So that's essentially what he's going to do. And I'd previously said, I think in a previous video as well, I'd certainly reported it about Stuart Lewis being a potential internal candidate as well. If you're not aware who Stuart Lewis is, he's been the under-18s league coach for a few years now, and he's won 3 trophies in as many seasons. He has produced helped develop a lot of those young players you've seen make their first team debuts in the last couple of years. He's a terrific young coach. Again, actually he's older than Matthew Wells. I think he's 37. But certainly one to watch within the game, and I think Spurs have recognised that. And I love that there's a pathway. That's the other aspect of it as well. Matthew Wells was an academy coach at Spurs. Justin Cochrane, academy coach at Spurs. Stuart Lewis, an academy coach at Spurs. This is what needs to happen. They need to come through. I think sometimes we're a little bit closed off, myself included, to coaches within a club. If they're not a big former player, like a Defoe, Yaya Toure, players like that as well that you see working within the coaching staff. If they're big names, you're like, get them in there, yeah, give them a great job. Like Ledley King, lovely guy, doesn't really have his coaching qualifications kind of thing, but we all kind of wanted him to do really well, and he's kind of gone back into the ambassadorial role, and I don't know whether he'll go back to coaching or not, but it is something that he needs to study for and kind of eventually do. If he wants to do that. But I think there is this thing, isn't there, where the experience of being a big name as a player kind of maybe makes you think, they must be great. And then, look, I'm not saying they're not. I'm sure they'll all go on to do very well for themselves. But you've got someone like Matthew Wells and Stuart Lewis and Ryan Mason before them as well, who they are very good coaches. I think they get judged by whatever part they've had to play in as well. Like Matthew Wells has had some real tough challenges he's been thrown into. He went with Scott Parker to Bournemouth and in Club Bruges in Belgium as well. And kind of, their teams, certainly with Bournemouth, were battling against relegation at that point. And, they'd just come up. And the Club Bruges was a difficult situation as well. But he's gone in there and he's kind of, you can't really judge him for what happened at clubs. And I mean, I guess if you want to judge him, he's a Europa League winner. Why not? So I'm really happy when young coaches who people inside and outside of Spurs speak very highly of are getting their opportunities. It's great. I think it's first senior role for Stuart Lewis as well. It's terrific for him. If I'd been more eagle-eyed, I would have spotted that earlier this week, Spurs in their job career opportunities page put one up for lead under-18s coach. I would have had it confirmed there and then that he was going to be part of Thomas Frank's team because because they're looking for a replacement. I would wonder if that will come from within. There's some good coaches that he's worked with there as well. I wonder if one of them will get the gig, but certainly, obviously, they've got to look externally as well to get a proper process. But yeah, so whether we'll get another little surprise or another member of the coaching staff or not, we'll find out. I'm sure that'll be confirmed in the next day or two. But certainly, I like the well-roundedness of the staff. There's a lot of kind of interesting people, very clever people, very good coaches with a lot of experience there in different avenues, and big club experience as well, experience of working around Thomas Frank, which is important as well. So yeah, let's see what they can all do together. We'll start hopefully getting little interviews. I hope we get interviews with Thomas Frank, but also some of his coaches to get to know them a bit better for people that don't know them, the newcomers as well. So yeah, what we got? Well, talking about those coaches, they're going to need new incoming players to work with, as well as the huge bloated squad they currently have to work with. I mean, I just named some of those ones for you that are kind of there, and they're that's without the international players. I was listing off loads of different players there. They will have a new one in Kota Takai, who is on his way to complete the formalities if he's not already in the country. I'm sure I saw an image of him at an airport, but I don't know whether that was a recent one or not. But certainly I'm sure he's expected to get that all done reasonably soon. £5 million transfer we've spoken about before. He said goodbye to the Kawasaki Frontale supporters on yesterday, because obviously it had been announced. It was this weird, not weird, but different way they announced it over there, that in Japan it was announced that he would be leaving for an overseas club. So this would be his final game against Kashima Antlers. If people the fans wanted to come and say goodbye, lo and behold, sold out stadium, and he played the full game as they won 2-1 against Kashima, who were flying high in the table as well. So it was a really good way to sign off for him. And it was really nice. After the game, I watched, there's a good 10-12 minute video of everything that happened after the game. The Kawasaki players formed like a guard of honour for him. They see, my sofa's slightly diagonal. I think I've turned my camera slightly. I'm not going to fiddle with it now. If I look like I'm slightly off to the side, no. Sorry about that. This is not a professionally run outfit. I think you can tell that. But yeah, they formed a guard of honour for him. He kind of went through, back out onto the pitch. They were all high-fiving him or slapping him on the back of the head, as footballers love to do. Then he kind of had to walk out into the middle of this stadium full of fans, just stood there in the centre circle by himself, and they played this like a tribute video to him, like a farewell video, which was very nice, even though obviously I couldn't understand what was being said because I have no Japanese language skills whatsoever. But it just seemed to be showing highlights of his 81 games for the club, because he joined them as a child in their academy. I think he was only 7 or 8 maybe. And it was very nice, and it finished with like a shooting star over the stadium. It was very good. And I'm guessing that's to signify him being a shooting star, a rising star as it were. And it was pointed out to me afterwards, which I then double-checked and confirmed using the internet's finest translation tools, that within the video, although they said just an overseas club in the build-up, the motto in Japanese characters was shown, "To dare is to do," which was very cool. Apparently, I think the closest possible version in Japanese is "no success without challenge," but it's essentially the same thing. That was really cool. There's a little nod to where he's heading off to, even though they couldn't technically confirm where he's going. And then he was given the microphone. He's only 20 years old, Japan international centre-back. Did about a 3-minute speech, 2.5-minute, 3-minute speech, speaking to everyone. Got applause from his teammates, fans. So hopefully whatever he said was very good. Then he bowed to all corners of the stadium, did a little walk around, took lots of photos. It was all very pleasant. So he'll be on his way, and hopefully that means he'll be able to get involved and start with the team. So it was pointed out to me by a Japanese football fan that he has played a lot of football since January, February. I think maybe 30, 31 games for club and country since February. So he's going to need a break at some point. They can't really just thrust him into it all. But certainly, I think the key really is that, look, he's not going to come into the team and start games straight away anyway. So that naturally should be the kind of kind of unofficial break that he'll have anyway. I think, but we'll see. We'll see. Be interesting to see. I did the piece behind before about with the Japanese kind of view on him, and it was really interesting. I think I did it in the last video, maybe the last video or the one before. And his English skills aren't great. Very composed, laid back character, and it might be a little bit of a surprise for him when he comes to Tottenham and then the madness of it all. But then it can work the other way. He could be so composed it might not faze him at all. We shall find out. And he'll be on his way. It'll be interesting to see whether he takes his number 2 that he wears for Kawasaki. It's available at the moment, so that'll be kind of an interesting sign as well. If you get the number 2, you're not someone that's expected to be a non-player observer for the first season kind of thing. So, we should find out hopefully over the course of this week about that. Obviously, plenty of Mohammed Kudus noise. I don't know why I went from Kudus into noise like that. Noise at the moment. With Spurs seem to be in pole position for him, which is great. I'm kind of wary of going too much into this, bearing in mind that with that one, I feel like that could suddenly move quite quickly. So I'm very wary that I could get to the end of this video and it could even be done. John Duran has left Al Nassr and gone to Fenerbahce on a 1-year loan deal. It's interesting, isn't it? The amount of players who head off to the Turkish league. That's Mourinho, I suppose. That's a big pull as well, isn't it? I'm not to do down the Turkish league, I should say, but obviously it's not considered one of the major leagues. Whereas but it attracts these players. It really does. But back to Kudus, he Spurs appears to be in a pole position. He wants to come to Tottenham from all of everything it sounds like. And I just find it a whole fascinating situation. I've said this before in last couple of videos we've spoken about him, that these two clubs that don't really like each other or haven't in the past. They haven't traded a player since 2011. But you've got this weird kind of situation where a player wants to come to Tottenham. Tottenham know West Ham are desperate for funds. Everyone knows they're desperate for funds to kind of fund their own transfer window exploits. But also West Ham don't want to kind of be seen to bend for a North London rival, really. A local rival that they haven't got this greatest history with. So, I'm intrigued to see kind of how quickly this moves along, because it would appear that Spurs have had a bid rejected now for him of around £50 million. I think there's add-ons including that take it beyond that. We know, we've spoken about it before, that there's this release clause in his contract for £85 million for Premier League clubs for the first 10 days of July. He's not going to go for that figure, surely, after a second season. It was not the best. Terrific first season, really exciting. Second season, struggled to make his mark. So, I would imagine hopefully when a figure is agreed, it will be for far less than £85 million. But yes, the next few days we'll see how quickly that moves. I've just got this funny feeling that it might shift into gear sooner rather than later. I think when you're at this stage and you know that the player wants to come to you, and you want to get that player in for pre-season as well, I think it starts to move that a little bit quicker, because also West Ham will want to get moving on their own transfer work as well. So I think it's in the best interest of anyone involved for this to drag on. Cue Tottenham, it dragging on, but we'll see. Like I said, I'm intrigued to see where he fits in at Spurs. He's a talented player, no doubt. I think he top the poll or top the stats for most dribbles over the last 2 seasons in the Premier League, I think. He certainly has got a lot of ability there. We'll need to see a lot more than he produced last season. But he would be a very versatile and potentially exciting player for Tottenham fans. And look, we want him to do business, and that would be a big money signing, and kudos to them if they get it over the line. We'll see. you know my thoughts on it. I would love them to go for Eze, who I know plays in a completely different position. I would love them to. Be interested to see what happens with him now, because obviously you've got a lot of talk about Arsenal going for Madueke. I wonder if Spurs get some kind of... Arsenal have to pay some kind of fee to Spurs for that. Whether there's some... Even if it's not like a sell-on fee by this stage, whether it's one of those... I can't remember the name of it. I think when the academy clubs get a certain little percentage, a tiny percentage still of future sales. Someone will tell me in the comments. It's completely gone out of my head. But yeah, Madueke and also Gyökeres as well as another one. So whether they're kind of going for those two as their big signings, where that leaves Eze, whether Chelsea come in for him, or whether he just stays at Palace, where he's been doing very well. But yeah, I must say, he was the one I just wanted Spurs desperate to go for this summer, because he just is class. And yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we know they like Semenyo. He signed a new contract since at Bournemouth. But yeah, and obviously Mbeumo seems to be set on Man United. So we'll see. But look, Kudus has the potential to be a very good player. He's 24 years old. Obviously was very good at Ajax, got Champions League experience, had that great first season with West Ham, but just not so great last season. Maybe that's what sticks in my head. Maybe that is kind of what not put me off him. And look, it doesn't matter my view on him whatsoever. Like I said, there's a player to be unlocked in there, absolutely, who could be absolutely amazing. But I just want to see far higher numbers than he produced last season. Albeit in a struggling team, but as I always say, look at what Jared Bowen did in the same team. It doesn't mean you shouldn't still produce very good numbers. You could argue that Spurs were a struggling team in the Premier League last season, and loads of players had 20+ goal involvements last season at Spurs. But yeah, they need to get it done. They need to get moving now and get that one sorted as quickly as possible, because the sooner he's in and working with Thomas Frank and the coaches, the better it will be for him going into this season, being kind of hitting the ground running as well, because it's not just about the Premier League, it's across all competitions. What else we got? I suppose on the money side of things, isn't it really? We know Spurs need money. They've been very public about looking for potential investment, and I wrote a piece earlier this week about this kind of feeling in and around the club about new investment being on the way. If there's one thing that has been said about Tottenham in recent years, it's that while they're how do I put this? Because people get very annoyed if you say they've got no money, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're one of the most highly valued sides in the world, but I would say they're asset rich rather than cash rich, if you know what I mean. Particularly they've made losses in the last, is it 4 or 5 seasons in a row? There was actually a really good detailed article in The Athletic by their finance writer did. I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago. I really recommend you go and read it. And it's a very interesting kind of look into kind of how Spurs have got themselves into a little bit of a situation with their finances. It's a lot of it is to do with, I think it's depreciation. I'm not a financial mind at all, but there's a lot about kind of debt and things like that as well. It's worth a read. It explains it far more than I can ever get into it. And the irony is my dad was an accountant, but I did not inherit his numbers brain whatsoever. But yeah. And look, that's the reason why Spurs a year or so ago very clearly kind of Daniel Levy came out and said that they needed investment if they were to properly compete with their rivals. So, look, it doesn't appear there's been any apparent movement on outside investment. So we would presume that the ENIC are going to be required to pump funds into the club again. You would think again in exchange for a bigger stake at Tottenham. We'll see. It certainly feels like there's something that's on the horizon anyway. They did this before ENIC. If it is to be ENIC putting funds in, they did this before 2022. Do you remember we had the fun and games around the £150 million capital increase, which Spurs then only appeared to take 100 million of. So it's one of those. You kind of look at it, is that not still there, the other 50 million? Then in December last year, I suppose technically this could be part of it, ENIC injected £35 million of capital into the club, which increased their holding within Spurs. slightly up from 86.91% to 86.91% from 86.58%. I know you desperately need to know those numbers. And that was unusual for ENIC as well. ENIC have not been like the biggest pumper of money into a club. When you look at the kind of investment by owners at clubs, they're down there. They're not the ones that they've kind of. And look, I know there was a lot of people that will say that that's a sustainable right way of running a club is that it should be able to sustain itself. But obviously, it is a bit frustrating when we've had transfer windows in the past where you just kind of wanted to see Spurs go that extra mile and they haven't, and that maybe is because the finances were not there. So it'd be interesting to see now if we do get some kind of investment from ENIC coming soon. And if you're interested in knowing the percentage ownership of ENIC's share of the club, a trust of which Joe Lewis's family are the beneficiaries of, owns 70.12% of that ENIC share. And then 29.88% is owned by Daniel Levy and his family as potential beneficiaries of discretionary trusts of that share capital. That's the way I have to say it. It's all very lovely technical jargon. And as I've said before about when it comes to finances at the club, just in the past few months or so, while yes, they're going to make lots of money from Champions League qualification and they're going to have made a bit of money from winning Europa League, it's offset somewhat by the fact that from going 5th place to 17th place in the league table, you're losing around 30 to 32 million pounds worth of prize money. I don't know what the 2025 prize money is, 24-25 is yet, but certainly if it was last season, that would be about 32 million pounds they would have lost. So, yeah, it's and look, I'm not saying that there's no, you cannot do a deal because there's no money whatsoever. I'm not excusing anything. People always kind of go to extremes when their reactions with stuff like that. I'm just saying if they want to have a successful summer window, they're going to need that investment to come in and they're going to need to put it towards backing Thomas Frank. They absolutely are. I think Spurs have spent money over recent years. I don't think that's been so much the case. I think it's been more what they've spent that money on. Whether that be signings that have not been the perfect fit or whether it is young players that are players for the future. They were investing in players that they felt would not kind of depreciate in value. Whereas maybe if they'd spent the same amount of money on ready-made players, maybe they would have done more. And yes, I know we now have a trophy. People can never say we're a trophy ever again. Well, not for a while anyway. But look, it's all kind of part of it, isn't it? Is the profile of who you go for with your transfer signings. You know what I mean. So yeah, that'll be interesting to kind of keep an eye on and what happens with that next, and whether that finance does come into the club, whether it comes in soon enough for them to do stuff. But certainly it seems to be something that has been looked for a long time. And just like I say, it just seems to be this kind of noises in and around. And I wrote this article earlier in the week that hopefully that will be on its way. And look, it may well be that it's ENIC. And if it is, it'll be good to see them kind of, find out. Just intrigued to see if it is ENIC, how much extra share that means they take of the club. We'll see. What else are we going to talk about? I should also stay on that as well. I can understand also disappointment that people say that the stadium was meant to be a game changer for the club in terms of what they can spend. And I do feel revenue-wise, especially they bring in a lot of, not only matchday stuff, but they do bring in a lot of, what's it called? Non-football, I think they call it. Non-football revenue, which is obviously the concerts, events. I know people mock and stuff like that, but that all does come back into the football side of things. That goes towards signings and things like that as well. It is all there on the balance sheet. You can see it with stuff like that. It's not something that is, there can be any real conspiracy about because it's there on the account. So yeah. So essentially, I get the frustration of it not being a game changer to the degree that people want. I do still feel like COVID absolutely stuffed them with it a bit. Maybe there would be a couple of years down the line on that, but yeah, there needs to be money coming in, and hopefully that happens soon because that's all. I've always felt that with Spurs when it comes to transfers. And I know a lot of clubs do deals in instalments and stuff like that, but I just wonder whether Spurs have been a bit more hampered by having that lack of ready cash to put towards stuff and having to do stuff in terms that maybe aren't as favourable to selling clubs as their rivals can. And look, we see it in the wages as well. The wages is definitely an avenue where Spurs miss out on players. Of course they do. We're in a game where their rivals can offer, another 1.5 to double what they can offer. And that has to play a part in things as well. 100% it does. So yeah, that's money. What else we got? I guess we're now in that period as well where Thomas Frank is now with players. He can start looking at them up close and personal. He can make better decisions now on them and which ones he wants to keep, which ones he thinks can do the job for him next season, and which players they need to get out the door, because there's various futures that need sorting out, and that in itself brings in money as well. It's another thing as well. I'm very wary that people are going to make out I'm saying Spurs are paupers or something. Please read that Athletic Finance piece. It is very thorough, very interesting, and will give you a better sense of, no, they're not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but they just don't have this base of cash right now in the way that they can operate, which is something that they need to fix. Again, look, it's a criticism in a way that the kind of allowed themselves to get into this situation, I suppose. But yeah, he's going to look at these players now as well, because there will be players that were key maybe under Postecoglou that will not be key under Thomas Frank, and there will be either an exit for them or they will be fringe players. Or likewise, there will be players that did not get into Postecoglou's thinking really, that Thomas Frank looks at them and goes, that's perfect for my system. He's absolutely perfect. There may be a surprise or two. There may be some of the players that we're completely written off, and actually they may come in and do a really good job for him within his system as well. And look, that's not to say that Spurs couldn't have moved yet whatsoever. I've said this numerous times. He and Johan Lange will have had discussions about what the club was clearly lacking in and needed sorting, and it looks to be that they decided the right wing was an area where it needed more strength in, and that's why they're looking at someone like Kudus, who kind of operates better off of that right wing, really. And yeah, so we'll see what the next few days or weeks, I guess, bring, because it's got to be a successful window, hasn't it? It's got to be one we get to the end of it and we're like, look, we're never entirely happy. Myself very much at the forefront of that. I don't think there's been a transfer window where I haven't kind of thought it's about a 6 or a 7 out of 10 at the most, because I've always wanted more. I'm greedy like that. But it is another window where there's going to have to be a lot of people heading out of the club. I'm sorry to say it again, but the club trained staff, which means he's going to have to fit 31 players currently into 22 spots in the Champions League squad. That has to be fixed. That cannot continue. Otherwise, you're not being able to register any of these new signings that hopefully are coming in through the door. So that's got to be fixed. I just get the feeling we're going to very quickly find out, as soon as he talks to players and looks at them, we're going to see a load of players heading towards that exit door. You've got to find exit destinations for them, of course. That's always been a sticking point for Tottenham. I always say that about Spurs. And maybe that actually, going back to that financial article, that was another key point, is that Spurs will spend, but they're not great at actually getting that money back. For a club that invests in young players that have a better resale value, presumably that's part of the plan, they're actually rubbish on the whole at selling. Yeah, get little bits and pieces that are good, like Højbjerg, I guess, going for 17 million to Marseille, even though he only had a year left and his contract's good. But I think their finances have been propped up mainly by sales of, like, I guess, Harry Kane, which was almost 100 million, wasn't it? Kyle Walker, Gareth Bale, you kind of get those big headline figures. But actually, when you look at the little bits and pieces that they sell players for, like Brian Hill. Brian Hill was brought in for, what was it? I've forgotten now, 20-something million plus Eric Lamela. He is not going to go for that with a year left in his contract. He's just not. Alejo Velis was signed for whatever, I can't remember what I said it was now. I think I said it in the last video, around, was it about 12 million, something like that, 13 million. He's not probably going to go for that because he hasn't really warranted that. So yeah, I think that's where they stuff themselves a fair bit, in terms of they kind of have this outlay that they don't recoup in terms of transfers. And look, maybe we always had this view that they were a bit of a selling club, and maybe they've kind of gone the other way to their detriment, that they don't let players go now until they're at a value, but they don't get much back. You know, like I suppose it depends. I was about to say Sonny, but it depends what Sonny kind of decides, really. If Sonny sees out his last year of his contract, then they get nothing for a player they signed for 20-something million. Or they could potentially get roughly that back if he were to go this summer. I don't know. I still feel like with Sonny, and I've said this before, and I've said it in reports before, I still feel like the MLS is a attractive proposition for him. And whether he could go now, I don't know to that, or obviously, I mean, technically he could go in January, couldn't he? Like Hugo Lloris did. I wonder whether that ends up being something he does because their season starts, I think it's April, isn't it? And maybe that's a better time to kind of make that switch. I don't know. We'll see. He may stay and he might lift the Champions League trophy with Spurs, which would be utterly incredible. Who knows? It could be a complete about turn, and under Thomas Frank, he might rediscover his very, very best and might sign a new deal with the club. We don't know. We'll see what the weeks ahead bring with that. What else we had? There has been a new arrival for the under-21s. 19-year-old midfielder Max McFadden. He's come across. He just left Leeds, although I don't know whether that was because he was about to come to Spurs. He scored 11 goals, 10 assists and 55 appearances for Leeds under-18s, under-21s over the last few years. He went there from Colchester United in 2022. Versatile again, plays an attacking midfield role, but has played up front. He's even played as a centre-back before as well. Like I say, left the club this summer and has made the move across to Spurs, so he'll be part of Wayne Burnett's under-21 squad. Signed a deal till 2027. He actually played 61 minutes against Spurs at Hotspur away in a 3-0 victory for Leeds earlier in the season, last season as well. So he wrote on Instagram, in case you're wondering, happy to have joined this amazing club. Can't wait for this next chapter to begin. Come on, you Spurs. Obviously, following in the footsteps from Leeds to Tottenham of Archie Gray, Oliver Boast as well, the 16-year-old that's coming into the under-18s after scoring 10 goals in 20 matches for Leeds last season. What else we got? Oh, Tottenham Hotspur Women appointed a new manager, a head coach in Martin Ho. 3-year contract, 35 years old. Been making a name for himself in Norway. SK Brann. He's done terrific stuff with them. Took them into in his first season into the group stages of the Women's Champions League, the first Norwegian side in history to do so after they won all 4 of their qualifiers. Then did very well in the group as well in the actual competition, finished second in a group that had 8-time winners Lyon, Slavia Prague, St. Polten. They only eventually went out to the 3-time winners and eventual champions Barcelona in the quarterfinals. He's Liverpool, born and bred. Went to second place, I think it was, Brand last season in Norway. Reached the semi-finals of their domestic cup. Left them 1 point off the top in their current season, or off the leaders, Valerenga. And he's got Women's Super League experience. Been assistant coach at Man United as they finished second in the table after getting promoted in 2019, and 3 years with Everton Women as well, and also head coach of Liverpool Women's under-21s as well. So, look, Spurs, it's their 7th season in the Women's Super League, and hopefully now he can build on what those before him did. Obviously, Robert Villaham last time out. Not a good season, but the previous season they reached the FA Cup final, the first time in Spurs Women's history. So, yeah, Martin Ho coming in, hopefully can take them on. I just figured that out. That was awful. I just figured it out mid-saying it. It was not meant to be a pun. Hopefully he can take them to new heights. Certainly comes across very well. Listen to his interview. Again, another good communicator. So, yeah. Be really interesting to see what he can do. He's already got a new signing in the bag. He's got his own Japan international who's come in Toka Koga from Feyenoord. 19-year-old signed a 4-year deal at the club. So, yeah, so that's that. Oh, I did say I was going to do a Q&A. I've rattled on for far longer than I was expecting to. So I'll do a few at the end of this one, and I'll put the rest to the next video. Right, what we got? Let's see if this works. Okay. I think I've set this up so I'm going to get your questions. Hopefully just not random comments. Okay. Andy Savage asks, given we now have a new manager to back, Champions League football, more stadium events than ever, will there be a greater incentive to make some statement signings? I hope so. I think Kudus would be a statement signing. I think he would be for the sort of money that you're talking about, and an established Premier League player as well. I want more. Absolutely. I don't want it to be like last season where they made one statement signing Solanke and then signed a lot of very young players, albeit very good young players. I would like them to make 2 or 3 statement signings. So we'll see. Like I said, it may need that investment comes in and that helps that. But yes, absolutely there should be, and hopefully there will be. What else we got? Christopher Ricketts asks, I read recently that Carl Walker-Peters has been training with Dele Alli. I don't suppose he would be classed as club trained as well, would he? I don't know whether that question is about Carl Walker-Peters or Dele Alli. Dele Alli presumably would be, but yeah, Dele's at Como, isn't he? And I've said before, I don't think throwing Dele back into the madness of Tottenham and Premier League would be particularly great for him. I think Como is a really good place for him right now. Carl Walker-Peters, if that's what the question is about, I have said before, Spurs have considered bringing him back as a potential club trained player, which he is. So we'll see what happens with that. I need to do some digging. Actually, I haven't really asked around about him in the last couple of days. He's obviously a free agent now. He's left Southampton. Be a few clubs looking to take him. From what I understood, he's got a real. He'd love to come back to Tottenham. So we'll see. We'll see. What's this? Richard. Again, if you're not aware how to do these Q&As, it's the first time I look at them when I read them. I just kind of want to be able to kind of react in real time to them. Richard Lee's asked, always been interested in the relationship between the journalists that cover Tottenham, such as yourself and Rob Guesty, Jack Pitt-Brooke, Jay Harris, Dan Kilpatrick, Tom Barkley, etc. You all obviously seem to get on well. How would you describe the working relationships? For instance, do you all have similar contacts within the club? If you find out some information, do you share it within the group, or would that be seen as giving away information to a rival company? Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah, we do have a really good relationship. We all get on very well, which isn't always the case at some clubs, certainly from what I heard here. But I think there's also, with a club like Spurs, there's a camaraderie because Spurs are not the easiest club to report on. Let's put it that way. And yeah, I think sometimes we will work as a unit to try and get things out of like the manager in press conferences. We'll go in with an idea of what each other are asking so we can cover all the angles. And yeah, we just get on well. They're all good people. They all mean well. They all write well. They're all very good journalists as well. Do we share stuff? Not really. Not really. I don't think that's the way it works because, yes, ultimately, at the end of the day, we are rivals. There'll be certain times where we will discuss stuff, but I'm sure that we all hold little bits and pieces back because, you know, they're just like me, that they'll have a lot of stuff that we've got from one source, but not enough to go with on a second, because a lot of us work that way. You know, like I said, they're all very good journalists as well. Although Dan obviously has left the Tottenham scene now. He's doing more of an editorial role. I'm sure he'll come back in the future. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's announced that, so I'm not saying that as any kind of shock scoop kind of thing. Would I there's another bit of the question I didn't see there. Would you congratulate them on a good story? Oh, of course. Yeah, any of us get a good story. We're always kind of, because it helps us sometimes flesh out other stuff that we kind of want to look into and report on as well. So absolutely. Yeah, it's a good bunch. We get on well. And yeah, we've obviously had some great occasions together covering Spurs as well, and some pretty ropey ones. And you've got to have a bit of gallows humour sometimes when it's not particularly great, and we certainly have that as well. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of gives you an idea on that. Another kind of behind the scenes one. Yo Dirk asks, could you talk about how you prepare for your videos? How do you gather information? What's your method for taking notes? How do you categorise them, etc.? Sort of behind the scenes. All of that, because you do a great job in your videos, and calm manner appreciated. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. How do I prepare for the videos? I think really a lot of it is what I've kind of been working on in the last couple of days, because I know some people don't want to read articles and stuff. So this is kind of for people that prefer to consume their content in different ways. So a lot of it has been in my brain anyway. In terms of notes, yes, I do have notes. You'll occasionally see me looking down slightly below where the camera is. It used to be a notepad back in the day, and then I realised I have a tablet. Why don't I just have a tablet? So I got a little holder that holds my tablet just underneath my phone, which records me. So yes, occasionally I will look down. It'll be a little bullet point or a note or something that I want to refer to or I don't want to miss. So that's how I do it. And I have, as I've said before, a laptop down here which has my various things around. It's got all my WhatsApp messages in case I get any little contacts and things come in during a video, and also latest social media stuff in case anything suddenly emerges during a video, so the video doesn't date really quickly. I know I try to cover a lot in these videos, and I think hopefully that what makes them a little bit different is that I know there's a lot of people that do short, snappy stuff, and that's great. There's a brilliant market for that as well. But hopefully what people find in mine, hopefully a lot of detail in them. I know I'll waffle on sometimes. I'll get distracted by something. But ultimately, the idea of these is that everything you could possibly need is packaged up in one place for you. And I've always said it's a video podcast for me. It's not really I know it's in video format, but in my brain, it's like a podcast. The podcasts I listen to are always around this length. And this, for me, is what this is. It just so happens to be in a video format. And I said before, people have said, why don't you put them out as an audio file, as a podcast? And that's because I have a podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, with Guesty. I don't really want to compete with what I do with Guesty because I really enjoy that as well. So that's why you have these. So that's what this is. What else we got here? Tobster51 UK asks, why have the club still not sold the stadium naming rights yet? I think that's because that would be something that would bring in a lot of money. I suppose because, it's, I've said this before, they've found great benefit and a lot of financial avenues out of keeping it as a Tottenham Hotspur stadium because it's become known as that now in obviously NFL and things like that. And it's become its own brand and product, I suppose, the stadium itself and the concerts being there too. They're actually finding that I guess they can sell bits of sponsorship based on that. So it kind of made the need for a naming rights partner not as desperate, but I'm sure that will still arrive at some point. What else we got? Carl Livermore asks, why do we want a West Ham reject who lacks end product and has an average work rate? Surely Eze would be better value than Kudus. First off, it's not a reject. I think they just desperately need the money. I would imagine they'll be looking for over 60 million for him. I would imagine that. So I don't think you can have a reject that's worth over 60 million whatsoever. And I think end product was more of a last season thing. And look, if he's got average work rate, he's not going to be able to work in the Thomas Frank team. Thomas Frank teams are hugely high working teams. So they would not be going for him if they did not believe that he was going to work his socks off. And as for Eze, I said it before, but different players, different positions. It's not really a similar thing. Right, I'll do one more and I'm going to have to head off because I wanted to try and make this under an hour. And also my wife is waiting with my dinner because she's a wonderful lady. Oh my goodness, that's a long-winded one. So I'll do that in the next one. What else we got? There you go, there's a good one to end on. Yezu5750. Since becoming a journalist covering Tottenham, what has changed about your outlook on the club? Definitely more cynical. Absolutely. But that's journalist. Being a journalist does that to you anyway. But also, it was a club that obviously, as a fan, you look at it in a certain way. And you get to see behind the curtain when you're a journalist. And of course, there's aspects of football at all clubs that you're like, it's not so great. And so definitely I'd say that's the side of things that has changed for me a little bit. That I did a podcast with Flav in the week, the Fighting Cock, the Lab podcast, which I really enjoyed. Please do go listen to it. I always like speaking to him. We do it every 4 years, I think it was the last one. He's got a really interesting kind of interview style. We kind of talk about more a little bit behind the scenes of doing the job. So certainly Yeah, if you kind of want to know more about that, I speak about that in that. So yeah, that's a good place to finish it for now. I will do the other questions, don't worry. I'm going to tag them on the end of each video. I'll keep coming back. They're all there, sitting here in my kind of tablet I can access. What else was I going to say? Oh, if you like your movies, I did another video on my Gold Goes to the Movies channel, which is the other one, because I watched Jurassic World Rebirth and F1 among other films recently. And yeah, they're spoiler free, so you can watch them before you want to go. I've gone over the hour mark now. I knew I would. But yeah, if you enjoy movies as much as I do, and you want to know whether it's worth going to watch any of these films without having it spoiled for you, that's what they're there for. They're kind of a similar vibe to these things. Shorter, of course. They're going to have to be. But yeah, there's a new one on there. There's a load of them. If I try to do like an older movie as well each week that I haven't seen before, so it's not always all the new releases on streaming and cinema. Anyway, talking about movies, that's a whole other thing. We're about Tottenham here. Right, let's see what happens with Kudus. I'm sure Spurs are going to have to spend a whole whack of money there. Will they meet what West Ham want? We'll see. It could be 60, it might be up to 70. Who knows what it's going to end up going to? Will Spurs value him at that amount, or will they walk away? The next few days will bring that. It could be that I have to do another little short update video in the next couple of days. I'm pretty sure that'll be the case. But yeah, you saw in the last one, always willing to do that as long as I've got time after a long working day, like he works down the mines or something. Right, time to head off. Looking forward to the matches coming back. Glad that the pre-season started. We can kind of start really looking to training stuff. We'll get more interviews. We'll get loads of stuff now. So that'll be good fun. I'm hoping I can get to a few academy pre-season friendlies as well, the under-21s, as long as they're not kind of around the same time as the first team stuff. But we'll see. I think Bromley away is the first under-21s one on Tuesday night. I might struggle to get to that one because I've got some prior commitments, but we'll see. If I can, I will. Right, time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.